A lot of students struggle to improve their LSAT scores, and even a lot of prep companies say you can't improve at various aspects of the LSAT, like, for example, reading comp. The good news is they're wrong. Today, I'm going to share with you how I personally increased my LSAT score by 23 points, going from a 152 to a 175, improving, for example, in areas like LSAT reading comp and logical reasoning. The secret is often doing less. For LSAT reading comp, for example, you don't need to take a ton of notes up front. Highlighting, underlining is oftentimes a waste of time, and the secret is often doing less. The notes you take may not end up helping you, and the highlighting and underlining tools on the online LSAT are glitchy to boot, meaning you may waste valuable time if you try to precisely highlight or underline a certain key area of the passage. In logical reasoning, there are roughly 15 different types of logical reasoning questions, and a lot of prep companies overcomplicate logical reasoning by saying you've got to memorize all 15 different types and the various strategies to understand each one. Instead, if you actually just take the time to understand the argument in logical reasoning, if you just take the time to understand the main idea of the passage in reading comp, the questions become a whole lot easier. And so the saying, keep it simple, stupid, works especially well in the LSAT when it comes to the LSAT. Understand the argument, what's the evidence, what's the conclusion. In reading comp, what is the author's opinion? What is the primary purpose? Those general global questions will carry you far, and the details, the supporting examples, you can always go back and find them when you need to help you solve a particular question in LSAT reading comp. Today, I'm going to walk you through a couple of strategies for both logical reasoning and reading comp. Again, it comes down to keeping it simple. In logical reasoning, when you get a question wrong, you want to understand why. You don't just want to use explanations as a crutch because that's someone else's supposedly perfect way of approaching the question. It may not work well on LSAT test day, given the time constraints, especially without the hindsight of already knowing the correct answer. And the other issue is these explanations are not personalized to your way of thinking about the question. And so at LSAT Unplugged, we have a strategy called the Socratic review method. We guide you through a framework to help you better understand what mistakes you're making and why. For example, did your misunderstanding come from the stimulus, meaning the argument? Did it come from the question stem? Or did it come from the answer choices, a tempting wrong answer or an unappealing right answer? If it was a tempting wrong answer, what made it tempting for you and what made it wrong? If it was an unappealing right answer, what made it unappealing and what ultimately makes it correct? Because the thing is, you have these traps of encouragement towards the wrong answer and traps of discouragement away from the right answer. And until you know which tricks and traps you personally are uniquely prone to falling for, you can't help but end up making the same mistake again. We walk you through this process in our programs, whether it's our one-on-one coaching programs or our live small group classes. If you're interested in finding out more, you can check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, in logical reasoning, there are those 15 different types of logical reasoning questions: strengthen, weaken, must be true, flaw, most strongly supported, and so on. The thing is, they do not all show up in equal proportion. Some are more common than others. And so while understanding the argument is important, if you're going to focus on any LSAT question types for drilling, for example, you want to focus on the most common types of questions, the big three being necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. You don't want to waste your time on less common types or rare ones like evaluate the argument or parallel reasoning, as much as you might hate them, just because they don't show up as often. So the biggest impact you're going to have, especially if your LSAT is coming up in the next couple of months, is going to be on those big three areas. Again, necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. Pacing also is incredibly important. It's not just about getting the questions right. It's about getting them right under test day conditions, meaning you get really strategic about how you allocate your time. In logical reasoning, for example, you want to be aware that the questions go in a general order of difficulty, meaning the first 10 are going to be the easiest. Those are your warm-ups, those are your gimmies. Don't second guess yourself. Go with your gut on those and save your time for the tougher questions later in the section that truly need it. So one benchmark might be, with standard timing, you aim to solve the first 10 questions in roughly 10 minutes. Build up a time bank you can apply to the tougher questions later in the section. For reading comprehension, there are three main categories of questions associated with a passage. You have those general global questions like main idea, primary purpose, passage organization, best title, tone, author's opinion. Start there and lock up those easy points. The detail-oriented questions that require going back to the passage, you can always go back to solve them in the moment. Don't get bogged down on the details and the supporting evidence during your initial read of the passage. Save these questions for second out of the three. And the third category of reading comp questions is the more inferential ones that require a bit more reading between the lines. These are the toughest ones. Save those for last and save your time bank to solve these difficult questions like parallels, analogy, strengthen, weaken, the types that are analogous to logical reasoning questions. They're going to be the toughest, and since everything is worth the same, lock up the easy points first. Anyway, folks, that's all for now. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.